Good morning and welcome to MZ's webinar series. This is the third one in this three-part season of webinars. I'm Will Cookson, I'm the Director of Economic Development at MZ UK. Well, this series has been focused on really on rebuilding your local economy and really trying to track what's been happening in terms of early signs of recovery. Today, in the third and final in the series, we're going to focus on re-emerging demand. I should say, if you've got any questions, you can raise those in the control panel, and we'll come to those later in the webinar. All of the slides will be shared later today, but yeah, do raise any questions as you may have them. Want to do a quick introduction to MZ for those that don't know us. Our mission at MZ is to help organisations and individuals make better decisions relating to the world of work. And we see understanding the labour market at local level as being absolutely central to that. We do support organisations through providing robust, detailed and localised labour market information, also known as LMI, in a proprietary data set. We work with two distinct types of data: structural labour market information, which comes from official government sources of data, which we model into a proprietary data set, and then big data in the form of employers' job postings, which we scrape, deduplicate, and extract the relevant information from, and people's online profiles when they're looking for work, their resumes and CVs and so on. And we also are building a live MZ skills taxonomy, where we're taking the way in which individuals and employers describe skills relating to the world of work. So today we're going to take a slightly different focus to the one we've taken in the previous two webinars. So obviously we're still looking at how things are tracking and how the labour market's been impacted by the pandemic. I mean, obviously we're in a very different place to where we were a year ago, but we're really going to focus in on how we can use MZ Insight to understand and plan around re-emerging demand. And to do that, we're going to explore the current labour market. It's kind of standing feature in our webinars, with a focus though on re-emerging demand. We're going to look at ways in which MZ's analyst tool can be used to help you better understand the green economy. I'll talk about this in a bit more detail, but this is something that seems to be coming up with many conversations with our customers in local government and at local enterprise partnerships, because of the fact that there's almost an opportunity to, the pandemic's provided an opportunity to reset and to rethink. And obviously this has come alongside commitments towards net zero and the emergence of the green sector. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. We'll also share details on how you can better understand your local economy and spend some time looking at your local area. So back to our regular feature, how is the labour market tracking? Well, recruitment demand is now firmly above the pre-COVID period, which is great. If you look at the far right there, as we get into May, you can see we're above levels that we were at the start of 2020. That's great. There's lots of anecdotal, there's lots of, what we're seeing is we're seeing recruitment demand actually finally pick up for hotels, restaurants, retail. Lots of anecdotal reports that these jobs are being hard to fill, especially in big city hospitality. And that might be also, there's underlying issues around migration. And obviously we've had Brexit come into play. So there seems to be a challenge there in terms of fulfilling those jobs. But the important thing is that recruitment demand across the board is up on where it was, something we've been waiting for. Now this slide, essentially what we're looking at here is we're looking at jobs growth year on year and versus the share of employment of those people that have been furloughed. And what's interesting is you can see actually this was year on year. So this was 2019 quarter 4 against 2020 quarter 4. So we're going back a bit now, but you can see there that the majority of the high volume of furlough was in accommodation, administration, and retail and arts and entertainment. And then you can see actually the areas that have been pretty stable throughout have been public administration, real estate activities, financial insurance. So what we're seeing then, we've seen this in previous webinars, is a mixed picture in regards to particular industries. And here we're taking a high level view of industries. So where are we right now? Well, time will tell. Recruitment demand continues to pick up. As I said, it's reaching into hotels, restaurants, retail. Lots of anecdotal reports that those jobs have been hard to fill. And then we've also got furlough remains fairly high. Saying that, the latest data brings it in at 3.4 million, which is a drop. That's at the end of April, and at the end of March it was 4.2 million. So it's going in the right direction. And it seems to still be concentrated in hotels and restaurants. What we want to see is that tail off, assuming that recruitment demand continues to be needed in those sectors. So now we're going to switch to looking at how we can use our analyst tool. Analyst is accessed online by our customers. Despite its name, it wasn't created to be used exclusively by analysts or data scientists. Essentially, it can be used by anyone that's interested in running reports to understand what's happening in their local economy. And what we're doing today is we'll look at practical ways in which it can be applied to help you understand these turbulent times. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at, well, at the end of May, this goes up till, we're looking at job postings. We identified across the UK over 1 million newly advertised job postings. These weren't the ones that were existed and hanging around. These were newly created job postings, over 1 million in May. That's up 40% on the volume of newly advertised jobs we would have seen in February 2020. So that pre-COVID level, 40% up on that. That is hopefully, and I'm optimistic about that, that is the recovery effect in practice. What I've done here is I've picked the top 25 occupations at a 3-digit level, so SOC 3, just to show the growth really in terms of demand that we've seen. And we're doing a comparison between May 2021, so the month before where we are now, compared to February 2020. And you can see across the board, and obviously in these top 25 occupations, things are up. Less so for marketing and associate professionals, which you see on the far right hand side. But we're seeing chefs grow up to a probably 30% up on February 2020, which is positive, and what we would want to be seeing at this point. Nurses still up, programmers and software, primary and nursery education, care workers, so health and social care, which we expect to see to be present, which is primarily driven, obviously, not just by the fact we've just had a pandemic, but also by the fact we've got demographic changes and aging population. So health and social care is a pretty constant, but still interesting to see that we've got levels of recruitment activity in terms of new jobs being advertised at a higher level than February 2020. This is all obviously coming from our analyst tool. This is looking at top 10 skills across the UK by quarter. And what's really interesting, if we go back to March 2020, something which we wouldn't have seen previously is we're seeing Microsoft Teams come through. There's a good reason for that. employers want their employees to be able to use Microsoft Teams in order to be able to manage their work and communicate with both internally and externally with their customers and with their colleagues. Microsoft Access is coming through as well. Then we've got some programming language scheme. We've got auditing, which always is a well-defined skill and is always usually around the top. It's been knocked down a little bit. Project management, again, very key skill that is used across a wide variety of occupations. And then we're getting some of the programming languages like Go, Agile. Nursing is there as well, right at the bottom. But yeah, like I said, pushed down by this real focus on not just hard digital skills for the digital sector, but the importance of digital skills across a broad range of occupations. So I'm going to do a quick recap. We've covered a lot of ground over these 3 webinars, and we've looked at how you can use analysts to determine how impact is tracked over time, and we'll have a further look at that in a second. Which occupations have been hit the hardest, and that was in our first webinar in this series. We also looked at skills demand and how that's changed. The second webinar, which we did last week, all of these are available on our YouTube channel, by the way. We looked more at sector strengths and how do you play to the strengths of the sectoral presence in your area, and how do you work to grow those further. We also looked at employment patterns, productivity in terms of GVA, fastest growing industries, where's the volume of jobs coming from, and we also looked at some ways in which you can use our input and output model to look at scenario planning. That was all. The final bullet points in that list were covered in last week's webinar. So today we're going to look at how you can use analysts to focus in on green jobs. So it's a bit challenging, the green economy, much in the way that the digital sector is sometimes hard to get to through structural data. So you might assume that the green economy is all about businesses and jobs that are specifically environmental. What we've found as we've been digging into the available data is that rather than there being a unified green sector, which is often how it's referred to, there tends to be green jobs growing within existing sectors, and even green skills being added to existing jobs. And this is what we expect to see going forward as well. Jobs absorbing a green skill set or requiring a green skill set. Now, traditional structured data sets such as the annual ONS Low Carbon and Renewable Energy Survey attempt to define the green jobs using quite narrow measures, i.e. standard industry classifications, which don't fully capture where the real green revolution is taking place, in our opinion. We think that the focus needs to be placed on examining how green jobs are being created in existing industries in the same manner as digital jobs have been in the past, and how jobs are becoming greener in general. For example, we know, if you take the NHS, for example, they will employ a large number of software programmers, which you may associate primarily with the digital sector. And we see it being the same in regards to where we're finding green jobs and green skills. So what we're doing is we're using a combination, primarily going to our job postings, with a combination of identifying job titles that have green, either green skills attached to them or are green jobs, looking at the skills from the respective MZ libraries, and we're identifying where green jobs are being created within existing sectors, e.g. sustainability consultants within civil engineering. And we're doing that through interrogating our job postings data, which is available within our analyst tool. So what we've done here is we've identified, and we're happy to share these with any customers, we've identified 366 job titles that have a green focus. And then what we've done is we've plugged all of those job titles into our job posting analytics. And we've run that back to January 2016 up until May 2021 to look at the breadth of postings. And the reason we want to look at the wide breadth rather than just the current vacancies is we want to understand what occupations these job postings relate to, what are the skills that are being sought by employers that are creating these jobs. So here we see some of the top posted occupations. So that time frame, as I said, back to January 2016, we see environment professionals coming through with the highest volume. We've then got refuse and salvage occupations, health and safety officers, environmental health professionals, down to engineering technicians, and a whole range of roles that may be specifically or are specifically related to the green economy, and to those jobs have a skill set that requires green skills. The top hard skills, again, we see Microsoft Teams, environment, health and safety, sustainability, legislation, recycling, risk analysis, renewable energy. So what we've done is we've gone from the job titles to be able to understand and identify, and there's a fuller list than this that you can get to with analysts, but to identify the hard skills that those employers are defining around these roles. And we can also do the same with common skills. And obviously we can do this, we're doing this is UK wide, but we can do this at a local, down to a local authority level as well. So common skills you'll see coming through: management, communication, construction, leadership. And then as we move on, we can also look at job postings by location. And we'll have a bit of a deeper dive into this to see how it's tracking. But you can see there we've got unique postings from January 16 to May 2021. The darker the colour, the more of those jobs have been advertised. So again, looking at how those green jobs have tracked over the last 5 years, you can see a steep increase, which is really interesting, for going from the middle of last year and continuing to climb up and up to a figure of 1,299. So we're seeing that trajectory that we would want to see. We can see how that tracks over time on our whizzy little video. And you can see it's kind of middling, it's staying in where you would expect it to be, and then a steep increase, which is interesting when you think that that has been taking place during and over multiple lockdowns and a pandemic period. And this, I'd imagine, is why so many of our customers are keen to look in more detail at whether there's opportunities to grow this particular, retrain people to go into jobs in this area, and obviously attract businesses that may want to or may have a focus in regards to the green agenda. So yes, if we look at this here, we can look at what we're looking at here is we've got a range from in terms of the colouring on this particular map, and we're looking at how jobs have tracked by a location over time, and we go from minus 50% all the way up to 200%. And if I press play, you'll see how this is tracked over time. So we go from January 20 to February 20, April, May, June, July, and we're starting to see real focus there. We're seeing how it's trended across the UK. And you can see there that activity in Wales coming through really clearly. It's noticeable that every area saw a decline in employer demand from April to June during that first lockdown period, in which jobs for most jobs declined, but there's since been strong growth across most regions, with Wales in particular seeing strong demand, 150% growth in job postings throughout the period, and London seeing the least, around 50%. Southwest and southeast there, London at 50%, east of England 98%. If you want to spend some time looking at this, it is available on our website in a blog post. And then we can also look, bear with me a second. We can also look at how employer demand has been tracking for green jobs by job titles, which you can see here. And what we're looking at really is we're looking at the top 20 job titles according to the number of unique job postings over the last year. Recycling managers comes out top with 6,258 unique postings. Environmental health and safety specialists, which are just below that, at 5,598. And sustainability consultants, it's 4,732. Quite useful if people are looking to work in this area to actually understand how employers are describing these roles. We can then have a further look at hard skills. So it's the top 20 hard skills, slightly bigger list than we saw before. These are demanded by employers looking to hire for the 366 job titles we've identified. There are some skills here which are generic hard skills, Microsoft Teams that we've discussed previously. That appeared in 21,828 job postings. Auditing, project management, but there are some specific green skills that are coming through clearly here, like sustainability on over 20,000 job postings, environmental health and safety, renewable energy. It should be noted that by identifying the skills that employers are looking for, using this sort of detailed data, organisations can look to become obviously far more deliberate in terms of potentially interventions that they want to put in place relating to the type, maybe retraining people to ensure they've got the skills that employers are looking for, or directing residents or community towards training that may be available, vocational training or employability provision, and particularly with the fact that people will be considering retraining if they've had a rocky time of it over the last 12 months. We can then look at employer demand but for green jobs at a local authority level. Now, demand's dominated by the Westminster area, which has seen over 10,600 job postings over the last year. There are also a number of big cities in there. Interesting, there are also a number of smaller towns that make it into the top 20, including Reading down there in the midpoint, which got 804 unique job postings, Milton Keynes and Warrington as well. And we're working with a wide range of customers across local government and across also local enterprise partnerships and mayoral combined authorities. And we're doing that to really help them understand the change that's happening within their local authority, but also to inform their strategic planning. Just to recap, our customers use MZ Insight to better understand emerging economies. We've looked there at green jobs that have been created, but also quantify their comparative advantage to understand which sectors they have a particular, or industries they have a particular presence of in their area, and how can they build upon that particular advantage. Also identifying opportunities for further growth. Are there opportunities to build a supply chain or to inform business attraction inward investment activity? Obviously, there are a large number of funding bids that are live at the moment and going to be coming out over the next year. And we think being able to have an evidence base that you can use to define the labour market in your area can be really valuable, and it's definitely a value to our customers. And then we come back finally to targeting interventions, which we've talked about throughout these webinars, and how we may be able, how we can help our customers to be able to put in place provision or interventions to support people that have been disrupted over the last year. So just to state a recurring message that I always have to give, we're here to help in regards to supporting your work. So where do we go from here? Obviously, this is the last one in this series. Well, we see it as being really important that you can use our data in order to better understand your local area, and we'd argue that you need that to be able to drive economic recovery and to understand how things have tracked. Even in the series of these free webinars, we've seen recovery continue to improve, which is great, it's positive. But obviously that's literally running 3 webinars over a 2-month period. We've seen some of that change. and we've seen then been able to track that going back over time. But I guess the challenge is, where does the negative economic exposure lie in your local economy, and do you understand where that is, and what do the emerging opportunities look like in your local area? So we've got the tools, the expertise to help you play an important role for the communities that you serve. So do reach out and make contact. There are very few spaces left, but if you would like to book a free even consultation session with myself, we can spend 30 minutes exploring the insight we have for your local area. Use the link here and it will be shared on the follow-up webinar, follow-up email after the webinar is finished, to book your place. Finally, I just want to see whether we've got any questions. Bear with me a second. Yes, last week's webinar will be, it will be available on our YouTube channel. And if you go through to our website, there's a click-through link there for last week's webinar. Are there any trends between the jobs people are being recruited to and the employment space requirements for those recruiting businesses, i.e. are those people working from home or in offices? Can MZ link the two issues? A really interesting question. We can link the issues if the employers specify it within the job vacancy. So on our job postings, you can filter the results to look at whether it's been specified that employees would be or need to be able to work remotely. But just the fact that they haven't specified that doesn't mean that the employer might not have an expectation about an employee spending some of their time working remotely. So for example, at MZ, we all work remotely, but once a month, and today happens to be one of those days, first time in a long time, but I'm actually based in our UK headquarters in Basingstoke. So it just depends on whether the employers are specifying that there is a filter that we can apply, so that any time remote working is specified within a job vacancy, you can filter by that to see. I'd imagine, and I think I'm on pretty safe ground here. I think we've seen it in terms of how we work directly with our customers. People are really comfortable using the technology to support meetings, in particular, either internal or external. So yes, I'd imagine that that is a trend that is going to stay. It obviously has an environmental consequence, going back to our thoughts around green jobs, but it also has an economic imperative, i.e. people aren't traveling all the way across the country, spending times in hotels. So yes, I imagine it will be adopted, but we've also heard anecdotally that employees and employers are missing and look forward to being able to get together to be able to collaborate in person as well. So there's going to be a mix and balance. I think we won't have it as extreme as it has been in lockdown 1, but assuming that we're able to go back to the office, I'd imagine, and also we've seen this with certain job roles on previous webinars that we've looked at. We've seen administrative roles and secretarial roles being suppressed. And we think that is primarily about the fact that the workplace has been effectively shut down. And we're seeing those jobs increase as well, which is interesting. So we're seeing significant growth there in terms of recruitment activity around those roles. Long-winded answer. Yes, we can see a link between the two issues. Really important to be able to track that. And as long as employers specify what the requirement is for that role, then we can capture that in terms of the job postings data that we have. Those were the questions that we had. If you do have other questions, do reach out. Finally, Wednesday the 23rd of June at 2 p.m, we've got a strategic webinar presented by Andy Derman, our MD, and Duncan Brown, our senior economist, on defining the green economy. So we're going to go into some much more detail than we did today. Today we specifically looked at the analyst tool and how that can be used. Here we'll be talking more broadly about the analysis that we can do above and beyond that as well. I do want to thank you for your time. For those that have attended all 3 of the webinars, do make contact if you have any further questions or would like to spend some time looking at your particular area. Thank you.